Matt is one of those good speakers. So, this time it's not about doing research, but more finding a way to create a message from the prompt and, again, explain what you have in mind. Impromptu is one of my very favorite events because when done well, it really looks like a magic trick. No speech up this sleeve, no speech up this sleeve, and yet before your very eyes, Matt will make a speech up here. The prompts for Impromptu are usually famous quotations, potentially song lyrics, a motto, a phrase, something not too long, but a memorable sort of thing. So once again, I ask you, do we have any favorite quotations that you might speak to? Yes?
Death is a unicorn.
Death is a unicorn? Okay. Yes? One more time, please.
Don't show the world how lonely you become.
All right. And one more. Yes? All right. So once again, before your very eyes, Matt will make a speech appear. Quiet, please. 30 seconds.
In the movie Bad Santa 2, which was an absolute flop, we saw the main character, an old drunken man who pretends to be Santa Claus. Now, the movie mainly relies on middle school dirty humor, those jokes that you'd laugh at middle school, even though you didn't really know what the dirty word was. Then you go home on Google and you search it and you go, But we see throughout this movie, he's faced with a bunch of challenges, and he just seems to go on and on and on, never learning from these challenges. But this idea of prevailing, it's shown in today's quotation of 99 problems, but I had to apologize because my dad was here last night and I had to say bad words, and I have to apologize because my mom's here, so a bitch ain't one. I'm really sorry. We weren't allowed to say that. And we're going to look at this idea, this interpretation of the quote, I have 99 problems, about how life gives us challenges, but it's all about how we overcome those challenges that defines our character. We're going to look at 3 different examples. First, a sports example, and that is of Stephen Curry. Next, we're going to look at Shane Smith, the creator of Vice News, and then we're going to look at a man from Mexico who goes by the name of Enrico. But first, let's look at the example of Stephen. Now, Stephen Curry is not an Indian food if you've been living under a rock for the last few months. Stephen Curry is a basketball player. In fact, he's one of the best basketball players in existence. When he was growing up, though, everyone told him that he had problems, that he couldn't become a basketball star because he just wasn't prepared for it. And he said, well, you know what? Screw that. I want to be a basketball star, and I'm going to put in everything that I have to overcome those problems. And he did just that. He had 99 problems. But what he made from it is incredible. In fact, he was labeled the MVP in the NBA last year. A feat that has been done by amazing basketball players. And that just shows how much we can learn to overcome our challenges and instead be defined by how we do. But next, let's look at the creator of Vice News. Now, the creator of Vice News' name is Shane Smith, and in a podcast with Shane Smith, he says before he started Vice News, he had a needle in his arm almost every single night. He did multiple types of drugs, whether it be heroin, cocaine, because he was looking for something. He had 99 problems, and unfortunately, he didn't know how to overcome them until one day, one of his friends came up and he said, well, why don't you make a magazine? And he says, well, that's kind of stupid. But then he thought, wait, that might actually work. And he went around and looked for people like him, people that had needles in their arms, and he asked them questions, deep philosophical questions of why they were doing that. And now, by overcoming those challenges of where he was, he now owns one of the most successful news companies in the world. That's estimated about $3 billion. He overcame his challenges, and he is defined now by them. But finally, let's look at our third example. And that's a boy named Enrico. Now, Enrico, unfortunately, is colorblind, so he came up with a contraption that he could put on his head that kind of made him look like a tool. And no, it's not a snapback when it's turned around. It's actually something that he used to hear the sound of color. You see, when he put this on his head, it had a camera. Whenever it detected a different color, it'd make a noise. For example, if I saw these seats, which are red, it'd make the note sound of E. If you saw purple, it'd make the note sound of F sharp, and so on. What we see from this example is that Enrico had problems, but he didn't want to be defined by those. In fact, he wanted to be defined by something great, by overcoming those challenges. And he did just that. He was able to become quite of a sensation in his home country because of his invention. Today we looked at the quotation together, I have 99 problems. I'm not going to say that. Well, that's hard. And we looked at 3 different examples. First, we looked at Stephen Curry, and we saw that how he overcame the problems that were addressed in his childhood and became one of the best basketball players in existence. Second, we looked at Shane Smith, and even though he was a drug addict starting off, he was able to overcome those, to become a better person, and now owns one of the most successful news companies in the world. And finally, we looked at the example of Enrico, and we saw that through his invention, he didn't want to be limited to just being colorblind. He wanted to create something new. So we return once again to the example of Bad Santa, with its middle school humor that honestly I still laugh at. And we see that instead of overcoming his challenges, he just let life hit him wherever he went. And we have to realize we should do the exact opposite. Whatever challenge that you might be dealing with, I'd encourage you to overcome it, to be like Steph Curry, to be like Shane Smith, to perhaps be like